At my cousin Betty's rehearsal dinner, she lifted her glass, smiled like she was about to make a toast, and said, "Every family has a failure. Ours is her." She pointed right at me. People laughed. I looked around the table. Her bridesmaids giggled behind their champagne glasses. Her fiancé, Mark, smirked like it was just a silly joke. Even my own mom gave a small, forced smile, like she didn't want to seem too serious by not laughing. I kept my face calm. That was the trick. Don't react, don't give them what they want. I picked up my wine, took a sip, and pretended the comment didn't bother me. But inside, it felt like I'd been punched in the ribs. I wasn't shocked. Betty had been doing stuff like this for years. Picking on me, pretending it was just teasing, then hiding behind a group of people who always let her get away with it. Since we were kids, I was the one who didn't fit in. I didn't go to college, didn't wear pastel colors at Easter, didn't smile wide in family photos. I joined the army instead of a sorority. When I came home last year, no one cared. No welcome sign, no call, not even a text. It was like my quiet failure made them feel better about themselves. Like being different was something to hide. And tonight, I was just another piece of Betty's picture-perfect evening. Just a joke between dinner courses. But then, the front doors opened. Big wooden doors, slow and loud. At first, no one looked. But I heard it, boots on the floor, the sound of metal. Someone walking with purpose. The room got quieter. A few people turned their heads. A man in full army uniform walked in. Polished shoes. Clean haircut. Shoulders back. He carried a folder under his arm. He looked around calmly, then started walking toward the head table, where Betty and Mark sat under twinkling lights. For a second, I thought maybe he was here for me. I stood up a little. He didn't even look at me. He walked to the microphone, tapped it once, and spoke in a clear, serious voice. "Sorry for the interruption. Is the bride here?" The room went silent. Betty froze. Yes, that's me," she said. The man nodded. "Miss Betty Vale, we need to speak with you about your other marriage." At first, no one reacted. It was like we didn't understand what he had just said. Then the words sank in. I saw Betty's eyes go wide. Mark slowly turned to look at her. "You're what?" he asked. Betty's mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked pale, like her makeup couldn't cover how hot her face was getting. The man turned to Mark. "She is still legally married to Corporal Brian Miller," he said. "We have it on file. That marriage hasn't been annulled or legally ended." People dropped their forks. Someone gasped. Chairs moved. The whole room seemed to hold its breath. And in that moment, I didn't need to say anything. I didn't need to explain who I was, why I'd been gone, why I didn't wear makeup or heels, or post pictures in matching satin robes with 10 other bridesmaids. I just sat back down, put my glass on the table, and watched the woman who had called me the family failure for years try to explain herself. I hadn't planned to go to Betty's wedding. Not the rehearsal, not the ceremony, none of it. When the invite came, I deleted it. I didn't need another reminder of how little I mattered to this family. But then my little brother, Paul, called. "You should come," he said. "You've been gone for years. Just show your face, eat the free food, and go home." He made it sound easy, like showing up wouldn't cost me anything. But I knew what I'd be walking into. Betty's wedding wasn't really a family event. It was a show. And I was just another extra, stuck in a role I didn't ask for. I came back from my last deployment 12 months ago. I served 6 years in the Army. 3 tours. The kind of time that changes how you feel about sleep, noise, hunger, and what it really means to be okay. But to my family, I wasn't a soldier. I was the girl who didn't finish college. The one who left instead of settling down. The one who came home quiet, plain, a little too serious for their liking. I moved into a small apartment just outside New York and started working at a veteran services office. It wasn't anything special, just helping other vets with forms, finding housing, and staying off the streets. It gave me a reason to get up in the morning. No one in my family ever asked me about it. My mom, Jessica, told people I was getting back on my feet, like I'd fallen down. My dad, Timothy, tried to talk but usually ended up saying the wrong things. He brought up Betty in almost every conversation. "Betty's doing great," he'd say, like her life was some kind of plan I refused to follow. And then there was Betty. We used to be close. As kids, we played together all the time. She was loud and full of energy. I was quieter. She'd tell me her secrets, and I'd keep them. But things changed as we grew up. Somewhere between middle school and prom, she stopped seeing me as her friend and started treating me like someone she just put up with. She chased popularity. I stayed in my own world. She wanted attention. I preferred being in the background. By the time I left for basic training, she barely even spoke to me at family events. She called it Ashley's phase, like joining the army was just something I'd get over. The last time we were in the same room before the wedding was at our grandfather's funeral. She spent more time talking about the food than about him. So when my younger brother Paul asked me to come to the rehearsal dinner, I hesitated. He's my only sibling, the only one who never made me feel like I didn't belong. He looked up to me when we were kids. I think he still did. I figured I owed him at least one night. The dinner was at a fancy spot by a lake, about an hour from where we grew up. White lights were wrapped around trees, glass lanterns floated on the water, and the tables were set up perfectly, with flower arrangements that probably cost more than my rent. I wore a simple black dress, nothing flashy, just neat and modest. I kept my hair down and didn't wear makeup. I didn't want attention. I just wanted to show up, say I came, and leave. Inside, Betty looked like she walked off a magazine cover. Her hair was curled into perfect waves, her lips painted a deep red, and her diamond rings sparkled even when her hand wasn't moving. She stood with her bridesmaids, all wearing dusty pink. Mark, her fiancé, stood next to her, like a proud piece of decor. When Betty saw me, her smile changed. It wasn't big or warm, just enough to look good in pictures. She came over and hugged me like we were old friends. "Ashley, wow. I can't believe you came," she said. "I told everyone you were probably off climbing mountains or, I don't know, fixing tanks." I said, "I'm working at a veteran center." I said it. Betty blinked like I was speaking another language. "Oh, that's nice," she said, then turned to introduce me to Mark. He shook my hand and gave me the kind of smile people give waiters or Uber drivers, polite but empty. I sat down at a table near my parents. My mom greeted me with, "You look tired, dear." My dad gave me a firm nod, then turned to talk to the man next to him about property taxes. I sat beside Paul. He leaned over and whispered, "You're doing great. Just breathe through it." I didn't want to be there, but I was. I had shown up. I thought maybe that would be enough. I didn't know it yet. But that night would be the last time anyone in my family saw Betty the way they always had. And the first time they really saw me. Dinner started like most family events. Everything looked perfect on the outside, but it felt tense underneath. Servers walked between tables with wine and appetizers. Betty's voice rose above the soft background music as she laughed too loudly at her friend's stories. Mark stood beside her, nodding like he was part of the fun, even when he clearly wasn't paying attention. I sat between Paul and a cousin I hadn't seen since middle school. He talked about stocks. I nodded politely, but didn't really listen. My eyes kept drifting back to Betty. She was doing what she always did, putting on a show. Everything she did looked effortless. People leaned in when she spoke. They laughed harder than the joke deserved. They kept smiling long after the moment passed. Then the speeches started. Her dad, my Uncle Ryan, spoke first. He thanked everyone, welcomed Mark's family, made a joke about surviving the bridezilla phase, and toasted the happy couple. People laughed. Glasses clinked. Next was Betty's maid of honor. Then one of Mark's brothers. Both were sweet, safe, and forgettable. Then Betty stood up. She didn't wait for attention. She already had it. She held her glass with perfect posture and looked around the room like she was royalty. "I just want to say thank you," she began, "to everyone who's been part of our lives, especially the ones who've shown us what not to do." A few people chuckled. Then she looked at me, really looked, and locked eyes. "Every family has that one person, right?" she said, light and casual. "The one who never quite figured things out. The one who still doesn't know who they are. In our case, well, she's sitting right there. She pointed. Actually pointed straight at me. Laughter moved through the room. Soft at first. Then louder. That kind of laugh that builds because no one wants to be the one who stays quiet. I didn't move. My face burned, not from shame, but from holding everything in. I stared straight ahead. My jaw was tight, and I focused on keeping my breathing steady. Mark was smiling, nodding like he agreed. Every family needs one, he said with a laugh. Keeps things interesting. More laughter. My mom laughed too, high-pitched and nervous, like she was trying to smooth over the moment. My dad just stared down at his napkin. Paul didn't laugh. He mumbled something, but I couldn't hear it. My throat felt tight, but I didn't say a word. I didn't move. I just stared at my water glass, watching the drops slide down the side. I had been through worse. I'd marched in heat that could burn skin. I'd slept in boots next to people who might not wake up. But that night, in that perfect, fancy room, surrounded by family and strangers pretending they knew me, I felt completely alone. The laughter faded. Betty moved on with her speech, like the joke didn't mean anything. But it did. She meant it. She wanted people to laugh at me so she could shine brighter. I thought about standing up. I thought about walking out and never coming back. But something inside me refused to let her win. So I stayed. A few minutes later, the final toast ended. Dessert was being served. Then the doors at the back of the room opened. At first, no one noticed. Music was playing again. People were eating cake, chatting. Then a man stepped inside. Tall. Clean cut. Wearing a full army dress uniform. The mood in the room shifted. Even before he said a word, people began to quiet down. Something about the way he walked made people stop and look. One by one, heads turned. People whispered. The room slowly fell silent. He walked with calm, steady steps toward the front of the room, carrying a folder under his arm. The sound of his shoes clicking against the floor was sharp and steady. He stopped at the microphone. His voice was clear and serious, not loud, but full of authority. "Sorry for the interruption," he said. "Is the bride present?" Betty stood. "Yes, I'm Betty." "I need to speak with you," he said, "about your other marriage." The room went so quiet it felt heavy, like the air had been pulled out. Mark slowly turned to her. "What is he talking about?" Betty didn't answer. Her lips moved, but no words came out. The officer didn't flinch. "Miss Betty Vale, you are still legally married to Corporal Brian Miller. That marriage has not been legally ended. We have official documents on file. I've been told to inform you as part of a formal process." People stared. Mark's parents whispered to each other. My mom had her hand over her mouth. My dad sat frozen, eyes wide. And Betty, her whole expression cracked. The fake smile was gone. She looked around like she was searching for a way out, something to say that could fix it. But it was too late. The damage was done. I looked down at my plate. I hadn't touched my dessert. My stomach felt empty, but tight. She had tried to embarrass me, tried to remind everyone that I was the failure. But now, in front of the whole room, her perfect world was falling apart. The room was completely silent. Not the kind of quiet you get when people pause, but a heavy, unforgettable silence that filled every corner. People looked around, but no one knew what to say. The officer's words still hung in the air. Betty was still standing at the head table. She looked frozen. Her hands gripped the back of her chair. Her chest rose and fell fast, but she didn't speak. Mark stared at her like he didn't recognize her. His parents looked embarrassed. Maybe mad. Maybe both. One of the bridesmaids whispered something. Another one covered her mouth, trying not to laugh or gasp. I stayed still. I didn't need to move. For once, no one was looking at me. No one was questioning me. I had come quietly. I sat, I ate, I kept to myself. And somehow that was enough. The officer walked forward and handed Betty a manila envelope. "This is a copy of the marriage certificate," he said. "You signed it 3 years ago in San Antonio. Until this is officially handled, you are still married under federal law. This could cause legal problems for today's ceremony." Betty took the envelope with a shaking hand, but didn't say anything. She couldn't look at anyone. Her lips were pressed tight. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Then Mark spoke. "Is this true?" She didn't answer. "I asked you a question," he said louder. "Is this true, Betty?" "I forgot," she whispered. "You forgot you were married?" "It wasn't real," she said, her voice breaking. "It was for insurance. He was being deployed. We never lived together. It didn't mean anything." Mark didn't respond right away. He stared at the floor. Then he turned and walked away from the table. He passed the guests, past the photographer who had stopped taking pictures. He didn't slam the door. He just walked out. Betty stood there alone. The officer gave a polite nod, then left the same way he came in. Once he was gone, people began moving again. They whispered, glanced around, stood up to clear their plates, or headed to the bar. I stayed in my seat, still. Then I looked at Paul. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "Fine," I said. "You didn't know about this?" I shook my head. "No. I wouldn't have kept it quiet if I knew." Paul nodded, still watching Betty. Guess she finally outdid herself. I could have stood up right then. I could have said something. Asked if anyone still thought I was the family failure. Asked if this counted as one of Betty's perfect life choices. But I didn't. I didn't feel like winning. I didn't need to make a scene. The truth was already out there. I didn't have to lift a finger. Instead, I stood up slowly, pulled my jacket on, and looked toward the door. Then I turned to my mom. She looked shocked, still holding her wine glass, only half full. "I'm heading out," I said. She blinked and looked up. "Ashley, are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. My dad stood too. "You don't want dessert?" "No." I turned to Paul. "You staying a bit? Want me to drive you?" "I've got my car. Text me when you get home," he said. He gave me a quick hug. As I walked past the head table, Betty was slumped in her chair, staring at the papers in her hand. No one was talking to her. For once, she wasn't the star of the show. She was just someone who made a choice and had to deal with it. And for the first time in years, I wasn't the one they were whispering about. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't anyone's joke. I was a woman who had served her country, come home, and held on to her dignity. A woman who had survived things no one in that room could understand. I didn't slam the door. I walked out quietly, calm, steady, and at peace. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I didn't have to prove anything to anyone. Outside, I walked to my car under a dark sky filled with cold, flickering stars. The wind off the lake was sharp, biting at my arms. As I unlocked the door and slid into the driver's seat, I sat there with my hands on the wheel, breathing deep. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even shocked. I just felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not happiness. Not payback. Just clarity. Inside that glowing, picture-perfect venue, my cousin's carefully built world had cracked. She tried to humiliate me in front of everyone. 6 minutes later, her own secret came out, and there was nothing she could do to hide it. But this wasn't about karma or revenge. It was about something inside me finally shifting. A line had been drawn. A weight had been lifted. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. It was Paul. "You good?" "Yeah." "You?" I typed back. Betty left crying. Mark's gone. Everyone's pretending nothing happened. I smiled to myself. It wasn't a happy smile, more bitter and quiet. That was just like my family. Hide the mess, smile for the camera, and pretend everything's fine. Go home. You don't owe them anything. I started the car and pulled onto the road, my headlights shining through the dark trees. As I drove, I thought about everything that led to this night. The years of being treated like I was less. The looks, the jokes, the way my parents never stood up for me, and how Betty always used me as the example of what not to be. She did it to feel better about herself, to feel more successful. But I never tried to one-up her. I never told her secrets. I never tried to make her look bad. I just kept going, living my life quietly and with pride, even when no one saw it. The next morning, my dad called. I didn't answer. Then he sent a text. Can we talk? I waited a few hours, then called him back. His voice sounded tired. He asked if I was okay, if I'd heard what happened. I was there, I said. I saw everything. She didn't mean it, he told me. Yes, she did, I said. She always has. He was quiet. Then he sighed. I'm sorry you were dragged into it. I wasn't dragged into it, I said. I was targeted. Another pause. Longer this time. I know you felt like you weren't part of the family, he said. That's our fault. We didn't understand what you needed. You didn't try to, I said. You're right. He didn't argue. He didn't defend her or himself. He didn't ask me to forgive him. He just said, I hope you'll still come to the wedding. Though by then, everyone knew it wasn't happening. I hope she's okay, I said. And I meant it. I didn't hate Betty. I felt sorry for her. Her whole life had been about looking perfect, about controlling what people thought. But in trying so hard to seem flawless, she forgot how to be real. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. It was from Betty. Ashley, I don't know what to say except that you didn't deserve what I did. I made a joke at your expense because I thought that's what people expected from me. Because I was insecure and selfish. You didn't do anything wrong. You just showed up and reminded me what real strength looks like. I'm sorry, Betty. I didn't write her back. Some apologies don't need a reply. Sometimes silence says enough. Instead, I pinned the letter to my fridge, with a magnet shaped like a dog tag, not as a reminder of the pain, but of the truth finally coming to the surface. A month later, I was asked to speak at a local veterans panel. I stood in front of a room full of strangers and said, You don't always get the family you deserve. Sometimes you get the one that shows you who you are by never really seeing you. After the event, a woman came up to me with tears in her eyes. She said, Thank you. My daughter's in the Army. I never knew how to talk to her without making her feel small. I think I've been doing it wrong. I shook her hand. It's not too late to do it right, I told her. As I walked away that night, I realized something. I had never been the failure. I had been the one they blamed to avoid looking at their own problems. I built my life with my own hands. I wore my silence like armor, not as shame. And for the first time, I saw myself the way I was meant to be seen. 3 months went by before I saw anyone in my family again. Betty's wedding was officially canceled. There was no big announcement, no message to the guests, no wedding pictures posted, just silence. Her social media went quiet. The wedding website disappeared. As far as the family was concerned, it became just another thing we weren't supposed to talk about. Something they hoped people would forget. But I didn't forget. Not because I wanted payback. Not because I was holding a grudge. I remembered because something real had finally happened, and no one could pretend it hadn't. The next time we got together was for my dad's birthday. Smaller group. No fancy speeches. No champagne. I almost didn't go. But this time, it didn't feel like I was walking into enemy territory. I felt different. I felt like I belonged. When I walked in, my mom gave me a soft smile. No comments about my clothes. No quiet digs about my job or my choices. Just a simple, careful hello. Betty wasn't there. I sat next to Paul and listened as everyone talked. And for once, they didn't talk over me. They asked me real questions. About my work, about coming home, about what I wanted next. I answered honestly. I didn't shrink myself to make them feel more comfortable. After dinner, my dad pulled me aside in the kitchen. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. We've been thinking a lot about that night, he said. I have too, I replied. He looked at me, not like a dad trying to fix things, but like a man seeing his daughter clearly for the first time. I didn't stand up for you, he said. I should have. All those years. I let it go because I thought it would pass. I thought it didn't matter. But it did, I said. Still, I made it through. And I'm not waiting for anyone to tell me I turned out okay. My dad nodded, his eyes a little wet. You did more than okay. That was all I needed to hear. Not because it fixed everything, but because I finally felt like I didn't have to fight to be seen anymore. He had opened his eyes. I never saw Betty again, not in person. I heard she moved in with a friend a few hours away and started working as a freelance event planner. No one in the family talked much about her, and I didn't ask. Her story wasn't mine to follow. But sometimes I think about that night. How the whole room laughed when she called me a failure, and how they all went silent when the truth came out. Not because I want to relive it, but because it reminds me of something important. There are people in this world who will try to define you by your worst day, your hardest moment, your quietest season. They'll tear you down just to feel stronger. And if you let them, they'll write your story without asking your permission. But silence isn't weakness. Sometimes silence is strength. Sometimes it's the loudest voice in the room. That night, I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't need to. The truth spoke for me. People always say, blood is thicker than water. But they forget the full version. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. It means the family you choose, the people who stand with you through the hard stuff, can matter more than the family you were born into. My family didn't know what to do with me, because I didn't fit their idea of who I should be. But I stopped trying to fit. I started building a life that didn't depend on their approval. I built it with service, with honesty, with strength. And in the end, I didn't have to become someone else to be worthy. I just had to stop shrinking for people who refused to see me. Now, when I walk into a room, I don't hope for their respect. I expect it. And if someone still calls me a failure, I smile, because I know better. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or ignored, just know this. You're not alone. And you're not less. You're more powerful than they ever gave you credit for. I hope this reminded you that your worth isn't decided by how others see you. It's shown by how you carry yourself, even when no one's cheering for you. You don't have to prove anything to people who refuse to see your value. Stand tall anyway. Quiet strength says the most, especially when the world expects you to stay small. If this story spoke to you, give the video a like. Share it with someone who might need to hear it. And drop a comment below. Have you ever felt like the black sheep in your family? I read every one. If you want more real stories like this about truth, strength, and starting over, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching. Stay strong. Stay true to yourself. And keep writing your own story.